Hi, Sid.
Hi, Tim. Good to see you.
Perfect. Likewise, hi to you, and also hi to everybody who's tuning in, the audience out there. Very happy to see, always more and more people tuning in to our regular catch-ups. And thanks everybody for joining and also for providing you the good feedback. Really appreciate it. So, Sid, for today, I'll like to give a short update on what I've been up to, and then actually have a very interesting question for you today. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay.
But before we get there, last couple of weeks from my side now after summer vacation, a lot of customer-facing activities. Yeah, so I've had the pleasure to visit at least six customers across three different countries. So that's always really nice and really engaging. Both audiences and people, that we deal with that have responsibilities for the solutions, ECM and or invoice management at the customers. And occasionally, also had the pleasure to meet up with some CEOs of our customers. And that is super exciting because it not only gives us an update on what's happening with them, how can
Mhm.
we then be better prepared, yeah, because understanding is a first part to be adding value, um, but also to understand, let's say, the reasons why they invest in the solutions that we help them with, what are the drivers, and yeah, and it's typically big enterprises, organizations, and it gets very exciting when I hear common things come out. Yeah, so I had
Yeah.
out of these six at least two who say, "Well, we actually tried with another software before." Yeah, because we got audited back in 2000, whatever, and the audit failed us on our document revision and controls and governance, so we had to do something about it. Then they selected, more like a local software player, but it did not scale. Yeah. So, and then they end up in, the open text software solutions, which are, I think, proven, to be serving not only in local areas, but globally with big volumes and complex use cases. So super exciting.
Interesting. And just when you have been talking to all these customers who are using OpenText Vim in different countries, do they also have the same, let's say, challenges you see in today's world, not necessarily to Vim, due to other things, or
That is a yes and no. Yeah. So there are commonalities, but at the same time, there are still big differences, and not so much from a technical perspective, but more from a maturity perspective. Yeah, and that's again where the fun is really when you have senior people saying yes, now we're gonna upgrade, right? And then it's like, okay, technical. What about some all of the new features and functionalities? There's some organizations and senior people who say yes, woof, sounds really great, but I'm really afraid, yeah, because our processes and our people, we are not there where we should be and want to be. So then immediately introducing, with a new technical upgrade, a lot of additional good functionality is not something they're always cheering. Yeah, so there's some, let's say, a risk
Mm,
aspect to that as well. So, and for that reason, I mean, organizations are different. Yeah, they sometimes have the same software for the same use case, but they can be very different on how they organize around it. So it's a bit
okay.
of a yes and a bit of a no. Um, but on that point, I mean, coming back to the thing I want to zoom in a little bit closer today is, now you just mentioned, the commonalities and the challenges, but we've talked in recent chats a lot about automation, but wouldn't it be, or I'm very curious to hear what is your view on how organizations first should get a really good grip on the manual work before looking at automation of processes.
A very interesting topic, right? Automation and how do you interpret it? What do you expect it? I will also start with the analogy. Recently, I was watching a documentary about robo taxis in somewhere in California. Right, they are having automated cars. Now, the idea of automated cars is you sit down and it just goes and you get out, right? But how does it go? That means there is a map somewhere done. It knows exactly what to do in a unforeseen situations by sensors, cameras, and so on. So all those algorithm is fed into the car, tested, and that's what the car does what it has been taught. That's why you
mm,
can say, I don't need to touch my steering, right? That would be
mm,
an automated car. I would be curious to see if the car, if I put a uh, destination which it has never been fed how to go to some mountain or somewhere else, right? How will it navigate? Maybe through machine learning or so on. But just to run analogy. Now, bringing coming back to our working world, my daily job of working with account payable and Vim customers, very often every day I hear the word automation. And the most talked about use cases are about tasks that people don't want to do because either they're too complex, too boring, takes a lot of time, but it just because it's kind of saying, take it away from me, automate it. Then there are tasks for which they're well in control. Yeah, it could be a business rule stopping and they have to touch it, but they know exactly what to do and they're comfortable. Those are not always high on the list of automating. So, which brings us back to saying, what is exactly automation? Vim is a great tool. It is very heavy in functionality and it is made to make the account payable process automated. But it's a tool. It uses or it is relies on people who will use it
mm,
in an organization that does its business in a specific way, because every organization is different. Even if they are doing the same business, they would be different because they are made of people. And then about culture and
mm,
external landscape. So the exact step in a AP posting, be it checking a vendor or posting a document, is not necessarily the same from a customer to customer. Secondly, when people are doing it, they see a invoice, a paper invoice or a PDF invoice, and they just know what to do, right? Or they just know this will be that tax code or this will be the amount to
mm,
be deducted. Now, that know is a lot of experience that has been passed on or they have accumulated. So it's
mm,
a logic they're building into, they're thinking when they see that's what is just know. So unless that piece is transferred to the tool, which is Vim in this case,
mm,
Vim will not know because they know. And that is the most difficult part because things like line item matching or doing approvals or coding and so on, right? I mean, you just know. So if the biggest challenge I have, the fun is also on it, is when I look at automation topic and people say
mm,
automate this part. And typically those are the things like uploading the COA, for example, right? It's a common topic, comes everywhere. But a
mm.
COA needs an
The chart of
approval.
authority, right?
Exactly, the
You
Vim
have the
chart.
approval limits. Okay.
Exactly. But then
Mm,
how do you get those information? It has to be somewhere in the system and then rules are to be
mm,
arranged, because that's always that brings me to the last part of the story. How good is the master data? Because
mm,
when we have people involved and a lot of processes are not aligned, then people make their own bridges, right, to using their own processes, which is quite manual.
mm,
And breaking those steps into logical algorithm is first crucial to achieve automation. So
mm,
then I always say that, okay, if you want to reach automation, we have to break it down into steps which anyone who has never worked in your AP team can sit down with a list. If he can do or she can do it
mm,
for 2 days without asking a question, my Vim system can do it for you.
mm. Yeah. But that means that the, let's say, the organizations who have their manual steps and process and work properly documented, do they have an edge over the ones that actually rely on people's experience and the fact they've been there for quite a while?
Definitely, if there's definitely an edge if you have your steps documented, but it's not very often. I mean, it's not like they don't have documentation. All companies have SOPs in place, but the SOPs are never in a detailed level of everyday life, right? What do
Mm,
happen if this vendor sends you that packet on a Sunday compared to a Tuesday? Yeah, that is where it comes to the details.
mm,
And but you would expect the system to capture all those details in this automation journey
mm,
and documentation to a certain extent, but then you need to fine tune it.
mm,
And there are ways how we help customers. I mean, you cannot say, okay, where do I start? That's the main question.
mm,
You always start with the biggest volume, especially when you're talking about automating. then you
Okay.
look at
Interesting.
biggest volume, and then you start
Yeah.
documenting. Okay, and you might end up with more than one document for sure, right? Saying, okay,
Mm,
there will be decision trees that goes through. But once you have that in place, then we can look at
mm,
how we translate it into
mm.
the system.
Okay, very interesting. But yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone should underestimate the creativity of the human being to get the job done. Yeah, because the system is a tool and the job needs to get done, and they'll find ways to do things. But does it? How does it then relate? Because one thing is okay, we have this creativity, which is for obvious reasons going to be a still challenging part to put that into software and algorithms. But is then previous data, you know, of relevance? Because what
Yeah,
I'm trying to understand is also a little bit okay, you have your standard operating procedures, the SOPs, very well documented on how the work should be done, even if there's manual steps involved. But then you have the system that basically records then whatever is done.
yeah.
And then we're
So
getting to the machine learning, which obviously relies on quality of data.
yeah, so that's a very interesting topic. What I told you now is till now was, let's say, how we were trying to automate a process using the standard functionalities in Vim and SAP and so on, even sometimes using outside tools like RPA.
Mm,
Now, in the recent past, machine learning, language models, ChatGPT, and such have a lot been in use, and this is also what an effect we see in the products. So there are attempts being made, there is functionality being coming up, which is looking at the data and patterns and trying to predict. A case
mm,
being the smart coding, case being the OCR that we have. And that we definitely see a big change in the OCR performance, right? I mean, it learns. You don't need to, once you train it properly, you don't need to touch it again.
mm,
Smart coding, we see improvement. There's still some more what things we want to see more, but there's definitely improvement on that. And I know that there are a few more cases being worked on that will be released in the new versions. So there is progress being made on that side. We will see more and more use cases being released, but this is an evolving field, right?
mm,
And it only limits to where you have data and that you can work on. But the logic of how you do uh, in a certain case based on certain parameters, you may not have enough data for all those logic cases. So I personally believe AI will help, but maybe it will not be enough on its own to address all the complexity. So you will
mm,
still have the manual part of building the algorithm, right?
mm,
Taking the knowledge from people's head when they say, I just know, to translate it and or enrich the AI.
mm. All right. Good. Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. But also, I mean, the question you asked me, okay, how do you see the commonalities, the same challenges across the customers? But I guess you must see the same, that there's a big variety, although you have a standardized invoice management or an accounts payable process, but it can be handled in a centralized way, a decentralized way, and so many
I mean,
variants.
the very common denominator, if I say across, is in today's world, customers don't want to use the validation client, right? If they have invested in the new OCR, core capture, or invoice capture, you don't want to validate because it's supposed to work. Yeah, that's
Mm,
one area of looking at automation. They want the PO line item to be automatically matched. Yeah, that's
mm,
always the Achilles heel. Then with the Vim chart of authority, right? It's a great tool. It's a great place to build it. But how do you put in the data especially in a large organization, which has changes happening, right?
mm,
Cost centers, owners, approvers, people coming, leaving, and they want to automate that. Now, there are some, let's say, tools available like a upload tool and so on, but that still needs manual tasks. Someone collect that data. And I see a common need or a common theme across customers. They want to fully automate it. And that we often end up doing. Yeah, a program that collects data from all different sources of HR
mm,
and master data,
mm,
build the logic and fill up the automation COA,
mm.
and then have
Okay.
error handling in place, right? So that's a
Mm,
very common topic I see, for example.
yeah. So there's a few things we've done already quite a few times where we might maybe in one of the next sessions or any other channels be sharing some best practices on how to achieve that.
Definitely, definitely.
Okay, good, good. Thank you for all those good insights. It also means for the people out there, if anything that we we're talking about, you want to hear a little bit more about, or those best practices on what we've seen and done in other places, feel free to reach out to us or leave a comment, and we will get very fast back to you. With that, it. Thank you very much for today. Enjoy
Thank you, Tim.
the rest of the day.
Same to you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.